In 1978, John Carpenter created a cult classic with Halloween, and it has since spawned off several sequels. And for the longest time, it was said that the original was always the best. Is that still the case? Well, today we're going to talk about it, so let's get spooky. Greetings everyone, my name is Nightshade, this is The Night Shift, a home for all things spooky, and today we're going to be looking at John Carpenter's Halloween, released in 1978, and this is the review series that I've been the most excited to do. And I know a lot of people have subscribed to my channel because of all the Ghostface stuff, but I gotta let it be known that Michael Myers is my all-time favorite slasher, with Ghostface being a very close second. I've said it several times that Scream is the first horror movie that I ever watched front to back, but John Carpenter's original 1978 Halloween is what made me a horror fan, because this is the first horror movie that actually scared me. So after my mom caught me watching Scream and, it didn't scare me, it was like she was on a mission to find a movie that would freak me out. The second movie I ever watched was A Nightmare on Elm Street, and that one didn't scare me. I thought it was cool as well, just the same way that I did with Scream. But out of all of the horror movies that I had seen up to that point, this is one of maybe two that genuinely scared the shit out of me. And I've been craving that level of fear from horror movies ever since. And from this video going forward up until Halloween, we are going to be reviewing the entire Halloween franchise. But before we get started, I want to let you know how I do my reviews. I don't do these in video essay form. Instead, what I do is I break these down into two separate camps: what I liked, what I didn't like, the positives and the negatives, as well as recommending that you go watch this movie for yourself. That way you can get your own informed opinion on it. And then after that, we score this film and then end the video there. So with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the review, starting with... So let's go ahead and get into the first positive, which is... This is one of the best, if not the best, horror openings of all time. For me, it is a toss-up between Scream and Halloween for who has the all-time greatest opening ever. From this opening, we get a lot of information with who Michael Myers is as a horror villain. He's slow, he's methodical, he's a stalker type because he stalks his sister through the window. And then he goes in and grabs a knife and slowly makes his way upstairs. He's a slow, patient stalker of a killer. And then he ultimately goes in for the kill, kills his sister, and then heads right back outside. And then it's revealed that it is a little kid that did this murder. Now, what I wouldn't give to see the audience's reaction the very first time they watched this film. Because back then, there wasn't a whole lot of, child slashers. It's all been adults up to this point. This is one of those films that I would have loved to have seen in the theaters when nobody had any idea about anything whenever it came to Michael Myers. It's especially with the opening, because it's one of the best horror openings of all time. It's definitely either in my number one or number two spot. Like I said, it varies between Scream and Halloween, but I'm giving Halloween the edge here because it's just awesome. It's because of the next positive that the opening is so good. So the next positive is definitely for me going to be the cinematography in this film is absolutely beautiful. John Carpenter spent most of the budget on this film on the camera alone. Like, he spared no expense whenever it came to the camera, because ultimately that was going to be the tool that he needed to use for the filming. And Dean Cundey, who was this film's cinematographer, he did an amazing job filming this movie. Like every shot in this film has a specific purpose, and they captured it masterfully. And it's because of this movie that I got really into cinematography. This is the movie that got me wanting to learn stuff about cameras and how to compose a shot and how to light a shot. Like the cinematography and the lighting in this film, second to none. And they did it on such a low budget, and it's still incredibly impressive to this day. Like in this film, you're looking in the background constantly, looking to see if you can see Michael Myers, because he is in the background of a lot of these shots, especially towards the end. You're also paying attention to the foreground and what's happening as far as the story goes. And it's just everything in this film, cinematography wise, has a purpose, and the way they did this film is phenomenal. And paired with those impressive visuals comes our next positive, which is this score is absolutely iconic. Who in their right mind doesn't know what Michael Myers' theme song is? Like, the music in this film is almost a character in and of itself, and not a lot of people do that anymore. Like, you know, we had Nightmare on Elm Street, we have Halloween, I guess, you know, Friday the 13th with the you know, that's not really a score, that's more of a sound effect, but, you know, each of those, you know, old slasher films from the late 70s, early 80s, they all had an iconic sound. So, like, whenever the needle drop came in, you immediately knew what kind of film you were watching. And nowadays, not a lot, if any, horror movies have that kind of feeling to them. Like, I feel like the score is almost as important as the entire film itself. Like, I genuinely can't think of any modern horror movie that has any sort of staple music piece to identify its franchise. I think the closest thing we got is Red Right Hand from, like, Scream films, and it's not even in the fourth one, so, like, and it's like the unofficial, you know, Ghostface theme song, but other than that, I can't think of any horror movies that do that, and I wish they would bring that back and make it more of a staple in horror, like have an iconic score that represents your brand and your slasher, and you just don't find that anymore. But I think, for my money, you know, Michael Myers' theme song is the best in the business, like, hands down, like, no question. But, you know, great cinematography and a great musical score is nothing if it isn't for our next positive, which is... And the story is actually pretty simple, but you don't need a very difficult, long, drawn-out story to make a great film. You just gotta work a simple story and make it something that is going to live forever, like I think this film is going to. One night on Halloween, Michael Myers kills his sister and gets locked up. 15 years later, he breaks out and once again wreaks havoc on Haddonfield, Illinois. And we've got Laurie Strode, who is trying to survive him, but, like, you know, that's basically the story in a nutshell, and it doesn't have to be a really in-depth, you know, story. It's a pretty basic story, but it's a pretty great story, especially paired with the cinematography and the score, and just the way they did everything was absolutely phenomenal. We're gonna go ahead and give small claps for John Carpenter for creating this masterpiece, because, I mean, my God. Up next, we have our next positive, which is... And to a lot of people, you know, Laurie Strode is the ultimate final girl. You know, Laurie represents the innocence of this world. She is the innocent final girl, even though Jamie Lee Curtis has said several times that she is very much not that person at all, and was not that person at the time of filming this film, which goes to show off her acting chops. And although Jamie Lee Curtis isn't the first final girl ever, I mean, you know, we got Black Christmas, we've got Texas Chainsaw Massacre before this film came out. Like, Halloween ended up doing so well that Laurie Strode ended up becoming the baseline for what a final girl should be. It was always the smart girls that didn't do too many bad things that ended up surviving a lot of the slasher flicks, and that is all thanks to Laurie Strode. She's very sweet and very innocent, but when push comes to shove, she will fuck you up. So Laurie Strode has definitely got to be on our positives list. Up next on our positives list, we have another iconic character, which is... So Dr. Sam Lumis, played by Donald Pleasence, is a phenomenal character. He goes from trying to help Michael to wanting to see Michael die because he just thinks that he is nothing but pure evil. And Dr. Loomis's character also acts as our exposition point. I'm a guy that genuinely hates exposition dumps, like, especially when it's all done verbally. So many movies do that, and it, like, nobody actually talks like that. However, my one exception is going to be Donald Pleasence's Sam Loomis. But the way Donald Pleasence delivered his lines, it's almost poetic, like he's reading poetry. The way he is talking about how evil Michael Myers is.
I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No reason, no conscience, no understanding, and even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, of good or evil, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes. the devil's eyes.
Like, he almost masks the idea that this is an exposition dump, but he acts so well that it almost doesn't feel like an exposition dump at all. You could take almost any line read from Donald Pleasance in this film, and it's pretty much iconic as is.
I watched him for 15 years, sitting in a room, staring at a wall, not seeing the wall, looking past the wall, looking at this night, inhumanly patient, waiting for some secret, silent alarm to trigger him off. Death has come to your little town, Sheriff.
You know, Dr. Lumis is one of my all-time favorite characters in this entire franchise, but I think he works best in this film. Like, he's the best. He's at his best in Halloween 1 and Halloween 2, but we'll get to that on Friday. So up next, we move to the next positive, which is, of course, the baddest to ever live, the baddest to ever do it, and the baddest there ever will be. Michael fucking Myers. He is my all-time favorite slasher, hands down. He is just an absolute soulless, shallow husk that just wants to kill. Nothing else is on his mind except for murder. In Halloween 1, there is no motivation. There is no reason. It's just kill, 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 and I love it. Like, he lurks in the shadows and stalks his prey and then inevitably pounces. For what reason? None. There is no reason whatsoever. He just kills because he wants to kill, and that's all he wants to do is kill. And for me, that is the scariest type of slasher, one that has no motivation and no reason other than the fact that they want to kill. There is no reasoning with Michael Myers. There is no bribing Michael Myers. There is only trying to survive Michael Myers, and he is just an absolutely phenomenal slasher. He's my favorite of all time, like I said, and I will say this ad nauseum throughout this entire review series because he's just so fucking cool. And since we're talking about Michael Myers, we absolutely have to talk about the next positive, which is, and yes, we all know that it is a Captain Kirk mask that they opened up the eyes a little bit and spray painted white and spray painted the hair a little bit more black. It's so simple, but so cool and so immediately iconic. It's literally perfect. It is void of all emotion. It doesn't move. It's constantly static. And much like Michael Myers, it shows no emotion, which is perfect because Michael Myers has no emotion. And towards the end of this film, and definitely the way it looks in the next film, which we'll talk about on Friday, you know, it starts to lose paint and starts to look just amazing. I love this mask with all of my heart. Definitely going to get this tattooed on me one day. This mask is absolutely iconic. I think if they would have went with the Emmett Kelly clown mask, I don't think this movie would be nearly as effective, but you know, I'm glad that they stuck with the Captain Kirk mask. Captain Kirk specifically, not William Shatner. We'll get into that around part 5, but yeah, Captain Kirk mask, not a William Shatner mask. But yeah, the fact that this is just something that they threw together, they had no plans as to what this mask was going to look like other than, you know, an emotionless mask. That's all they wanted. That was like the only outlines that they were given for creating this mask. And, you know, for something that they threw together on a whim, the mask is absolutely iconic, and it was the perfect storm for a perfect slasher icon. Like, absolutely a perfect mask. And there's been a lot of really great masks throughout the franchise, but you know, there's also been a lot of stinkers as well. We'll rank all the Myers masks after we get through the Halloween franchise, and you know, I'll let you know my thoughts on which ones are the best and which ones are the worst. So up next on my list of positives is, there is a lot of tension and build-up in this film that is almost painful to sit through at times. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's very much a good thing, because, you know, they keep doing a build-up and a build-up and a build-up, especially, you know, with the music going on in the background, the, you know, the boom, boom, boom. This also builds into, you know, one of the first positives, which is the score. The music helps ramp up that tension, and they don't really give you much of a release at all. Like, it just keeps building and building and building.
Please! Tommy, hurry up! Tommy, please!
And like the tension doesn't ever really let up until the movie's over. Like, you know, when Laurie's running from Michael Myers and, you know, he's crossing the street just painfully slow and the music is building up and, you know, Laurie's screaming for the kids to let her in and, you know, she finally gets into the house and what happens? All of a sudden Michael Myers is in the house. Like, and then you get like a little bit of a reprieve, but then, you know, Michael Myers is the unkillable killer and just keeps coming at you and keeps coming at you, and it never lets up. The tension keeps building. Like, whenever you think you're safe, you know, then Michael Myers gets up from the background. All of that previous tension is right back up in your face, and there's not even a ramp up. It's just all of a sudden you're like, oh my God. Like, this film is a masterclass in a lot of different categories, like cinematography, scoring, you know, tension building, world building. There's just a lot that a lot of, you know, new up and coming cinematographers and directors could take from this film because it's so good. So up next we have my final positive, which is not only was the opening iconic, but the ending of this film, I think, is probably the most iconic ending in any horror film ever to exist. Like, I honestly can't think of a horror movie ending better than the original Halloween. Like, I can't think of anything that comes remotely close to it. And the ending is the thing that scared me about this movie because, you know, he gets shot, he falls out on the balcony, you think the good guys have won and that everybody's safe. And then he disappears. He's nowhere to be seen. And then you just get clips of where he's been and you just hear his breathing in the mask, and then it ends. There's no definitive safety net. There's no good feeling at the end of this film. And what really freaked me out is, you know, my mom watched this with me and she would just look at me. My mom has a really creepy demeanor about her sometimes. Wonder where I got it from. But, you know, my mom slowly looks over at me and in like the calmest but quietest voice goes, "He's still out there." And then she got up and turned the tape off and went into her bedroom and just left me hanging in the living room. And that really freaked me out, man. And that ending stuck with me for such a long time, and it's just I love it. And like, I've not really been that scared of horror movies, but that one did me in. And it's just because, you know, they kept all that tension and they didn't give you, you know, a comfortable feeling knowing that he was dead. It was just, they give you the feeling that, you know, he's still out there waiting for you. And, you know, as what was I, like 8 years old whenever I first watched this movie, 8 or 9 years old. Yeah, that really freaked me out. So that is all the positives out of the way. Now it's time we move on to and the first negative for me is there is no negatives. Typical Halloween fan, right? Now, I will concede, you know, even though this is a perfect movie to me, I will concede to maybe the younger generation that hasn't seen this film or, you know, has been raised on like Art the Clown and stuff like that. I will concede that, you know, this is a relatively bloodless movie. You're not going to get a whole lot of blood and violence. It's all based in the mind of what you think you see, and that's very prevalent in like back in the day whenever I first watched this on those old TVs. And like, it was a very dark film, and you think you see more than you actually do. This is very much theater of the mind, more so than just up in your face blood and violence. I will also concede to the younger audience that, you know, the visuals of this film are a little dated. You know, it's a lot of that old 70s sort of grain, even with high definition transfers. It still has that old school vibe, but I love that vibe, but I understand, you know, not everybody will, especially the horror fan that, you know, grew up watching horror movies in full, you know, 1080p, you know, crisp, clear, high definition on flat screen televisions. I understand this movie might not be for you, but, you know, for me personally, this is a perfect film. So even though I find this movie perfect, not everybody will, and that's okay. You know, different strokes for different folks. Variety is the spice of life, and this just happens to be my spice of life. So for my ranking of this film, we have a solid 10 out of 10. This movie is absolutely perfect to me. So let me know in the comments below, how do you feel about the Halloween franchise? How do you feel about the first film in general? Yeah, let me know in the comments below. I look forward to reading them. That's just gonna about do it for me. If you liked the video, let me know by leaving me a like. Comment down below what you want to see on the channel next. I will do my best to accommodate. And until next time, my name is Nightshade. This has been The Night Shift, and I will see you in the next video. Stay spooky, my friends. Oh man, I didn't want this video to stop. Like, I could have been talking about this for a very long time, but I've had to stop myself. And like I said in the beginning, you know, Michael Myers is my all-time favorite slasher, and I thought this channel was going to be more Michael Myers heavy, but, you know, after Halloween Ends, that left a sour taste in my mouth, so I went with my second favorite horror icon, which is Ghostface. But now it's time to start putting a dent in the Halloween franchise, and I am more than excited to do it. And yeah, really stoked about the next 2 months worth of content. I'm going to be rehauling a Michael Myers mask. I've actually got one off camera already started. I just don't know how long that video is going to take me, because I've got to film these videos as well, so that way I don't miss an upload for you guys. And if you're still watching up to this point, comment down below #SpookySquad so I know which of you are the real ones. So I'm going to go ahead and end it there, because I have to film the Halloween 2 review. So see you later, guys. Stay spooky.